Did you know that over 70% of adults report experiencing at least one adverse childhood experience? In psychology, they call this ACEs. Yet so many of us are still not talking about it. Well, in today's episode, our guest is living proof that trauma does not have to define your future. Welcome to Project Purpose Podcast, your weekly guide to clarity, courage, and purposeful action. I am your host, Sheryll, and today I have the honor of speaking with an incredible individual. Born to a 13-year-old and abandoned as a newborn, she could have easily become a statistic. But instead, she broke every cycle, overcame every odds, and turned her pain into power. Miss Farrah Shelly is an American police officer, a community leader, and a successful entrepreneur. Her story isn't just about survival, it's about rising against all odds. Tune in now as we dive into this raw, real conversation on resilience, purpose, and breaking free from the past. So, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Project Purpose Podcast. I'm your host, Sheryll, and today I am super excited to have a special guest here with us because her story is one that shares with us that your past does not have to dictate your future. But I'm going to get out the way and let her share her powerful story with us. So, join me in welcoming Officer Farrah Shelly to the show. Welcome, Officer Shelly.
How are you today?
Wonderful. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you so much for joining us today. I know
absolutely.
that you lead a very busy schedule. So we're very honored that you take the time out to be with us today and to share your powerful story. And I'm going to go ahead and get right into it. I want to go actually from the beginning, and I have my notes here with me. So share with us, what do you remember about your earliest experience with family, love, and belonging?
As far as my early experience, beginning experience was quite different up to the age of five. It's a little blurry, about 5, 6 years old. I was put in the foster care system. That's what I remember. Being in the foster care system, the first one not being so much the best. And then slowly after I moved into another foster care home in which it was a couple that did not look like me. Actually, quite frankly, it's a couple that taught me that love has no color. Amazing couple. They used to call us the interracial Brady Bunch because there was so many of us and we were mixed, a mixed crew. But once my brother was born, I was put in that foster care home with him. And just to give a little insight as far as how that even came about, I'm the oldest of seven. I didn't find that out till I was 23 years old, as a brand new recruit in the police academy. But anyways, my biological mother had me at the age of 13. Unfortunately, she didn't have the best guidance. So it's no fault to her own fully. And then from there, unfortunately, her life went into, direction of drugs, the street life, things of that nature. So I was placed into foster care, and apparently she had more after that. So that second foster care home, I was placed in that when my brother was born. We were put there together, had an amazing, short time there with those foster parents. And then we were adopted together by our parents. He is now 30, 31 years old. I can't keep up now because he's still my baby. And as I said, I didn't find out till the age of we've lived a great life. Don't get me wrong, we've lived an amazing life. Grateful. I feel like everything that happened for us was meant to be. And then I didn't find out to the age of 23 that it was not just us. We had five other siblings, in which two I was able to meet. Unfortunately, were the two that did not get saved from the system. So they kind of started in the same path as what we were saved from, but I'm happy to say now they are doing amazing. And then I have other siblings that I've never met yet, that were apparently adopted. But my 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 beginning years is definitely brought about a lot of gratitude because I know what life could have looked like for me, had we not been put in the system and adopted, because you have a lot of children that are in the system and still are looking for a forever home. So yeah, I'm grateful. I say my
Yeah.
life has been a journey, but I'm definitely grateful.
Yes. And I love that you use the word, my forever home, because, and obviously you're an example of it when you are in the system, so to speak, and you're not at your home, you are open to different homes. So it's like one year you might be with this family and it might be great, but another one may not be as great, and so on and so forth until you become adopted. And it's funny that you use that term because I've heard it before where children that are now adopted, they see that as their forever home.
Hmm.
So that's great. So before I go on to the next question, just to piggyback off that one, so then you got adopted. So now do you have that sense of belonging, right? That like this is my forever home.
Absolutely.
No more adoption, no more systems. This is mom, this is dad.
Yes. Once I was adopted, at a young age, when I know what was happening, you know what that means. You have found your forever family. So
Yeah.
absolutely, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
We've lived a great life. My parents are amazing. They're no longer married, but they are still to this day love them to death, love them equally. So we have, and I say we because I'm referring to myself and my baby brother, who, thankfully he didn't know anything but a good life.
A
He
good life, a good home.
from the beginning phase because he was an infant when he was fit in the system. So I'm happy for him to, for the most part, see nothing but the good side.
Awesome. And you mentioned you were about 5 or 6 when you become conscious and aware that you're in the system, and obviously it turned out well for you. When did you first realize your story didn't have to define your future? In other words, you did use the word that it could go another way. When did you realize that you could actually dictate your own future?
For me, I honestly feel like it was more so, um, of course, the structure, of my family, my parents who adopted us. It was, we knew we were good. The
Yeah.
minute that we were adopted, we knew we were good because we knew what that meant. There's a lot of work that comes into that on their end as well, and even being able to do such. But I really, as a young adult, I really will say in college when I gained more so of my independence and a bigger understanding of just what life could have looked like, what it looks like for some kids, who, pretty much have been in survival mode all of their lives. And that's kind of really when it dawned on me that it's my responsibility, but I'm blessed enough to be in a position where I truly can make that decision on how my life ultimately turns out for me. And I'll say it was my college years.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. So obviously, then you had, your parents instill that love in you. So really, college, you mentioned that, and we're gonna go right into, that whole mindset of what it takes because you mentioned, born to a 13-year-old and given up for adoption. At some point, a part of you must have felt um, unprotected, but yet let's transition into the career that you choose. You are now a successful American officer, police officer. What made you choose law enforcement?
Part of it was, when I was in college, I wanted to go to law school. I actually wanted to be an Air Force JAG in particular. And down the line, closer to ending my degree at Spelman College, I decided that's not what I wanted to do anymore. I felt like I had come across too many attorneys that kind of seemed miserable, and it wasn't just about the money for me at that point. So, going on to grad school, honestly, to just kind of help keep the bills afloat and figure out what I wanted to do in my life, I fell into my father's, his background is military, retired after 24 years in the Army. And I figured, if I was going to do the military, I could do this. It became about where my department was heavily hiring. And so I decided to, opt in, give it a try. Felt like I was overqualified. And then not only that, I wanted to help people. I saw the value in that. And then three, I definitely have always, after gaining that understanding of, I fully have my life in my hands as far as what I choose to make of it. I wanted to do the complete opposite, or become the complete opposite of what I came from, and that was a part of it. So, which is obviously the the complete opposite of what I came from. So I was proud of that accomplishment, and just understanding that everything has not always been perfect for me. So feeling like I can really make an impact on my community, as far as giving that community policing aspect of it, as far as being able to relate, and not necessarily judge so much, So
Yeah.
it wasn't initial plan. That wasn't my initial plan, but it happened that way, and it actually led me to um, other endeavors. It's kind of ironic. I didn't become an attorney, but it led me to the life of entrepreneurship that allows me to place people in front of some of the best attorneys. So I truly feel like everything that's happened for me um, was destined. Was destined to be.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about your transition as well into entrepreneurship. But how has your past shaped the way you serve and protect your community? And I think you answered that already, but I want you to dive a little bit deeper, because you mentioned that now you can go at it from an angle of relatability as opposed to judging. And you're someone that, obviously, the law enforcement is to protect, to serve, but yet you yourself, as at least in your earlier childhood, was not protected. What mindset did you have to develop, and what drive you to turn around and give back what you didn't get, in the beginning at least?
I feel like if anything, it allows me to reason more when I see certain situations going on. I'm at a certain division now, but when I was on the streets in poorer areas, if you will, when I first started my career, I enjoyed it. But I feel like, especially when it came to kids, there were certain things that I could kind of pinpoint or relate or understand that there's a little bit more going on than what appears to be on the surface. And I mean, I think those things are important when you're one, dealing with children, because children children alone have different ways of communicating, and sometimes it's silent. So you got to pay attention to what's going on within their surroundings, their environment. Or even sometimes when I'm dealing with an adolescent who has gotten in trouble and I'm having to deal with that, and then you go home and you see what environment they're in, you see what conditions they're living in. No lights are on, there's a hole in the, just so many other things. And it helps you understand, like, this is not just a choice of this child. It kind of gives you an understanding as to why. And for me, that's not even, I won't say that's just from what I experienced, but some of those being able to relate is solely because of seeing what my siblings that didn't get saved, taken out of the system, and what they, how their life ended up temporarily. Because like I said, they're doing amazing now, but they're adults, and they understand, and they're in a position to make their own decisions. Whereas beforehand, they were in survival mode. So that's where a lot of the misguidance came from, because they were only focused on doing what they needed to do to survive. And I've come across a lot of children like that in the poor areas, who were living the same life, and it made a difference into making this decision, because I do feel like every police officer has the ability to be the type of police officer they want to be. So you have some that are, when I say by the books, I get the by the books, that is to protect us and to protect our community. But you do have some that may have more of a heart for something else because they can relate, or they can pinpoint something that the next officer might not be able to relate with. So it makes a difference in what the outcome is. So I think I answered that question.
No, you did really good because, as you mentioned, obviously you have the heart to serve. You can see beyond the book, so to speak. And I believe a big part of it would be your experience, right? You can relate, as you just mentioned, and you paint a very, amazing picture for us where most of these kids, they're in survival mode,
Mm-hmm.
and they act out, and people have different ways of acting out. One of the things that we talked about in psychology is, ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, and a lot of things that happen to us as children. If we don't get healing, we carry it over into adulthood, and even as an adolescent, as you mentioned, they're just surviving, and it may not always be the right choices that they do at the time. And so it's good to have individuals that are the law, right? You have authority, you're leading, but you can also lead with a heart of compassion, and understand, and maybe inspire them to do different. So I think that's great. I think that's powerful.
Thank you.
Me myself think that is very courageous to become an officer. Like, it's not a walkover, because you have to, you're facing good and bad every day,
Absolutely.
and so I commend you for it. We appreciate you and what you do. But now we're going to talk about, your current successes. And, funny enough, you are, as I mentioned, already a successful American police officer. You could have stopped there, right? You're making good money, you're getting good benefits. It looks good on your resume, it looks good in your community. You could have actually stopped there, but you've decided to venture out into entrepreneurship, and you have built an incredible business for yourself. So I want to ask you again, I believe it's a lot of mindset. What gave you the courage to step into entrepreneurship?
For me, honestly, it started with a service making sense. I mean, and that's solely how I even got involved. Prior to that, I've always been a hard worker. As police officers, we work a lot of part-time side jobs as like security, just to kind of help supplement the income that we don't get on our paycheck. To build or create that, I guess in so many words, life.
Lifestyle.
Yeah, because for some people it's a whole family. And for me, in my mind, I don't have any kids yet. I'm not married. I'm like, goodness, like I'm doing this for the extra income, for the leisure of it, because I do believe in having a life outside of law enforcement. Law enforcement does not define me as far as a person. And I tell, even when talking to the younger officers, that you have to leave this job at the door. I mean, it's a mental thing where you have to have an outlet. You have to have some kind of life outside of this job, because if not, it could ruin you if you're not strong, if you're not in a position to focus on something else when you're not at work. But for me, the money made sense. After learning about the service, the service made sense. So finding out that there was money attached to just telling other people about the service is that was a no-brainer. I talk to people all the time. I come across people all the time. It happened to be something where it just seemed like it meshed with my job and what I do, because I come across plenty of people who would reach out to police seeking some kind of legal assistance, and it wasn't something that we could dictate. It was something that had nothing to do with the police. So therefore, I can't tell you the right answer. So I really feel like it was destined for me to fall into that. And because of that particular vehicle, when it comes to entrepreneurship, that just opened up my mind to truly being in a position where or learning about solely what entrepreneurship is. Yes, does that mean work as well? But to be able to work for myself in a position where I can determine what my income is compared to having a set income on my job, which I'm grateful. And one of my mentors used to always tell me, if you see $1 or $100 bill on the ground, which one are you going to pick up? And the answer is both. Why leave money on the table? My job with the good benefits, as you said, the medical benefits, and just putting myself in a position, if I can do what I'm doing in entrepreneurship and still have a job, why not keep it? Why not keep it until I've learned the value in being able to have options. I have option to walk away when I choose, but I also have the option, if I don't want to turn my business into a job by leaving my job, to just keep both. So because, life happens. This is my first experience with entrepreneurship. So I definitely never wanted to be in a position where, you have a bad month in business and now, you look up and you're struggling because it's like, oh man, like, I wasn't expecting this. So I'm when it comes to entrepreneurship, it's opened up the doors to an entire new community for me. When it comes to a village, I've always had a village. Obviously, I'm adopted, foster care. My parents, my church village that I grew up with, and then joining a particular business vehicle and gaining a whole new world, a whole new village within that, and just being taught differently, because there are some things within my life that I didn't experience after my parents' divorce. I was blessed enough to, still be around solid marriages, be around healthy marriages, understanding what it looks like to grow through some things and still, come out strong on the other end. So I have good examples around me, where there's financial, whether it's marriage, just life. Those who have experienced a little bit more life than me, and I just I don't know. It's I feel like people have different opinions on entrepreneurship, but I don't see how it could get any better than being in a position as an entrepreneur to make a choice, to have a choice, to have a voice. And that's what it means to me, having a voice in my life, how my life ends up, where my life goes. I have a voice when it comes to my financial happiness, that leads to so much more.
Yeah, yeah, no, powerful. And, you clearly went from surviving to thriving. And I know for our listeners, she's not going to brag on herself, but I'll share a little bit with you to say that we already mentioned her successful career in the law enforcement, but she is a multi six figure part time with her entrepreneur business, her home based business. And she has won many prizes and accomplishments within the company. But most importantly, she has been servicing her community, thousands and thousands of people. So, congratulations to you, Officer Shelley.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about something that could be sensitive. We're getting close to ending this, but I want to go back to your beginning just for a little bit as we wrap this up and talk a little bit about healing and forgiveness. Have you gotten an opportunity to forgive your biological mother as yet? And what has that journey looked like for you?
Yes. Well, for me, like the one thing I remember about my biological mother, I just remember it was a Christmas Eve. She had dropped off a lot of gifts at my first foster care home. And, as a kid, I was young. So playing with the gifts, all that good stuff. And I look up and she's gone. And that was my last time ever seeing her. That's the last visual I ever had on her. But as far as forgiveness, after it wasn't till turning 23 when I agreed. When the state tried to reach out to me, because at least the state of Georgia, once you turn 21, they will assist if you have like biological parents that are trying to find you, or et cetera. They'll assist them in doing so if indeed you agree, and you have the option to, communicate via mediator, et cetera. It's up to you, and that's how I chose to do it, because one, to protect myself, two, to protect my brother who wasn't 21 at the time, but it was fair enough for him to know, like, hey, you're not the little brother, you're actually a big brother, and to just kind of closure for him, because I thought it was a great thing for him to know as well. So I agreed to communicate. Even unfortunately during that time, she was still in and out the system as far as the prison system. So I would communicate via a mediator. So they would read our letters, or screen for anything, make sure, because I chose not to share my address and certain personal information, again, just to protect myself. Because I do remember what I kind of came from, and I didn't want to be exposed to opportunities, if that, in so many words. And it wasn't just because of her, it was because of her mother, and etc. So I communicated with her via the letters. That's when I found out all the information as far as some of my background that I didn't know, as far as siblings, etc. And it was good. That was good closure. For me, it was closure. I felt like that was, I didn't, at one point I felt like I owed her at least that, but through therapy and other things that I went through in the past, after grieving and several losses within a month and a half, and just finally opting to go through therapy, I realized therapy helps you peel back a lot of different layers from a long time ago. And it kind of helped with that. That was a part of it, some of my childhood, but I definitely 100% forgave her. I understood that you can forgive someone without, and at the same time, understand that there's nothing else more that you can actually give them or do for them. But I'm a faith-based believer. I do believe in forgiveness, and I do believe in not just forgiving somebody. You have to forgive somebody for them, but you have to forgive for you, for your peace, and etc. And there, if anything else, I told her, no need to apologize. The best thing that could have happened to us in the end very much did. So if anything, I was grateful for that. So, but yes, that forgiveness, it wasn't hard for me to forgive. It wasn't. And I feel like maybe it could have been different had I lived a troubled life throughout my entire childhood and adulthood. If things had looked different for me, I wonder what that could have looked like, because I can imagine other now young adults, or teenagers who did have to go that route, where their life wasn't diverted at an early age like mine. So yes, but for me it came easy, because I can't stress how grateful I am for how things did turn out for me.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I want to stay there a little bit. So, at what age did you get adopted?
I
You
was
and your brother?
I was 6. My brother was an infant. He was a baby.
Okay, you
Um,
did mention
I
that. Yeah.
was about 6, 5, going on 6, or I just turned 6. It was something along the lines of that. And
Yeah.
it's a great area there, because I remember my first birthday that I do remember with my family. I had turned 7 years old. So it was between, I want to say it was right after 6 years old or so.
Yeah. And the reason why I ask is because, thankfully for you, it's usually around that age, around 5 years old, when individuals start to become conscious,
Hmm.
of life, and they get to know like their color, they get to know if they're rich or poor, they get to know if they're being abused, they get to know if this is right or this is wrong. So thankfully for you, as you mentioned, that was the exact time when God stepped in and just put you into the beautiful arms of your loving parents. So we're glad that your story turned out that way. And you also mentioned counseling. talk to us just a little bit more. Just whatever you want to share. You don't have to share what you don't want to. But the reason why I'm asking is because, a lot of us, especially Black individuals, we are finding it difficult. There's still a stigma in doing therapy and, getting help. And, we're taught to be tough, to be strong, especially our men, but women as well. And we might just brush things off as it's just a part of life. Dive in a little bit deeper on how it was important for you to go through counseling, and looking back now, what it did for you.
Well, for me, first of all, the whole strong for me is a trigger. I think it's a trigger when men call me strong or strong woman or what. It just depends on who it is that's talking to me, because I don't necessarily want to, yes, have I been in positions where I had to? Yeah, but I don't, I think it's not, to me, I feel like sometimes it's not in the best context, depending on who is coming from, if that makes sense. So but I tread lightly when it comes to that word, because sometimes I don't want to. I'm not always strong. Now, I don't always feel strong. Now, do I always have to show up for me? Absolutely. And and I feel like that's the struggle. We understand that we have to show up for ourselves, but on the outside, it looks like, oh, they're just superwoman or superman, or they don't need this, or, there's nothing more that I can do for them. And that's absolutely not true. I even on the, just not to go off topic, but even on the dating scene, when, I don't think sometimes men understand that, hey, I didn't go from my father's house to immediately married. So, I went from my father's house to on my own, and I had to take care of myself. It was either that or be on the streets, not care. So, but I don't want to. That's all in the story. But going back, what was the initial question? Because that was go way left field.
Yeah.
When it comes to what was
Just counseling.
yes,
Yeah.
as far as therapy, I've never been against therapy. I've never been. I know, like you said, our community thinks it's taboo. Sometimes it is not. And for me, I knew, and I think a lot of people can tell when you get to the point where you're just coping, right? And for me, it was a total crash and burn. I felt like it was going to be that way once I lost 3 loved ones in a month and a half, like from different aspects of my life, college, co-worker, my grandfather. It was just all within this bubble of a timeline, and I couldn't take it. And for one point, I had started traveling like crazy. That was my way of coping, because I am a water baby. I'm a water sign. When that's my safe space. That's my happy place. So that's why I got to the point where I was running off whenever I was dealing with some kind of grievance. But that can lead to other things if you're not monitoring it, like finances and etc. So I knew that I had to do something else. I had to find another outlet. So I was not ashamed to seek therapy. I knew some of my friends had already opted into therapy, and I just knew that would be probably the release that I needed to grow through some of the things that I was feeling. And so, and I wouldn't change it for the world. I still recommend it to this day. There are times where, I know some people may consistently have a therapist. I went through what I went through, got through what grew through what I grew through. And am I currently in therapy? No, but I know that if I know what it feels like to be in a space where I would need to, so I'm not against it. If I'm ever in this dark space where I feel like I just can't get out on my own, I will go right back into therapy. I will go right back into counseling and talking to someone who could help me peel back layers, because that's exactly what it is. It may be some phase of your life that you're dealing with something in particular, and it pushes you to go to therapy or counseling. And the next thing you know, you're pulling out so many layers of your life that you've never actually done before in counseling or therapy. So you realize you get to the bottom of so many other things that have been, you just kind of buried and moved on. And it's for me, it's been a blessing. I recommend anyone who feels like they don't have because it's not just a matter of having someone, your friend to talk to, or etc. Sometimes you do need that professional assistance. It's not a matter of you being mentally off, or the ignorant may say crazy, or it has nothing to do with that. That is, your mental health is just as significant as your physical health, if that makes sense, because your mental health can change the direction in itself, can change the direction of your life. So I recommend it to any and everyone. And like I said, if ever a need where I feel like I need to opt back in, I absolutely will. But therapy has changed my life. um, it has helped me categorize things. It's helped me, and it goes well uh when you welcome it. It goes well within your life when you're open to things, because if it was, I can't tell you what mentally things may look like for me had I not opted into therapy, and at the same time had the village that is heavy on self development, because that is another, for me, that is a heavy part of my therapy and my growth. So it's so many elements that go within that, for me, fall within as far as my life. Therapy is definitely one of them. Self development, as far as being in a position where I'm being put in an environment of self development, because my job alone wasn't doing it. I have to admit that. That was something that came later within my entrepreneurial years and being around that village. So there are a lot of elements that I didn't necessarily plan for, that have every bit to do with, my outcome and where I am currently in life up here.
Yeah, yeah, no, very powerful. And thank you for sharing that. I totally agree with you. And, oftentimes it's not even about the professional side of it, though, as you mentioned. Should you need that, you definitely want to seek that out. But it's also your village. Do you have a mentor? What books are you reading? Who are your friends? Who are you associating with? And so, we thank you for sharing that, because a lot of times it takes, therapy in itself is good, because any type of depression and anxiety, as you mentioned, can affect other areas of your life that may be great. You may have great finance, relationships, and stuff like that, but if your the mind is not right, then it can break down a lot of other things. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I believe you actually answered this when you mentioned personal development, because I was going to ask you, what habits did you develop in order to succeed despite self doubt? I'm sure, like you said, again, looking back, from the system and your early experiences, you must have had some self doubts. What pushed you past that, and to still, like I said, not just survive, but to be thriving?
Well, when you get a taste of what it looks like to, I mean, it feels good to, for me, it felt good to, outside of my job, to make a certain amount of income, because of, I succeeded at something. And granted, yes, I can succeed at putting more hours in on a part-time job, all that. Yeah, we all can do that. So to truly be in a position where I found a vehicle that not only committed to what they said they would do as far as the income, the money, seeing that the money is real, but then seeing the accolades that come behind it, the amount of cheerleaders that was, surrounded within that vehicle. I've never seen anything like that before. My job, you see a little bit of it here and there, but the amount of cheering you on, the amount of praising, the amount of, wishing you well, to truly see so many people happy for the next person winning, that spoke volumes to me. And I always say, at the end of the day, if I can't thank my biological mother for anything else, hey, aside from life, um I know she had it may not been, the best route, but she had a hustler mindset. I mean, she had a survival mindset for sure. And her way of, surviving is not the route that I wanted to go or ever wish for. I don't wish that on anyone, but she had a heart to survive. And I wanted to make sure that at the end of the day, if no one else has me, I got me. If no one, so it's up to me. I truly believe that it's up to me, especially because I don't take lightly that I have a choice. Some people don't have a choice. Some people only know their survival life, right? Some people don't know that, hey, yes, this may be wrong, but they don't necessarily have any other option to get what's needed, right? So I being in a position where I have a choice, being in a position where I don't have to, it's up to me to do what's needed for me to succeed and not just survive, because that survival mode is something that I never wish on myself. If I were to ever have any kids, I definitely don't wish that on them either. I don't even want them to know what that feels like. I am not in a position, because of what I was blessed with, family, etc. I'm not in a position to fail.
Yeah, to
Yeah,
play with it, to take
yeah.
it lightly.
We all go through things. We all go through ups and downs. Sometimes we're at the peak of a valley. Sometimes we're at the bottom of it, and I get that. But it's always going to be up to me, to pull. Yeah, I may need help, etc. But it's going to be up to me to pull myself out of that. So I don't take having the ability to. I don't take that lightly. Don't take
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Awesome. So, and I think you sum it up, but maybe you cannot, I think you did, but maybe you can agree here. When you look at your life today, what does it mean to you?
It means overcoming, and I've had a lot of help with that, from my family, etc. But I think overall, it means overcoming. It means I love the book by Tupac Shakur, the poetry book, "The Rose That Grew from Concrete." I really do believe that. Even sometimes my mentors have called me that, but I feel like just in that title alone, there's so much truth, because people see the glory, people may see the the accolades, and not just about anybody's life, anybody that they may look up to, and don't realize how deep that story goes, what they've had to grow through to get to the person that they're inspired by now. And I and it's even when seeing, I love people's story, and I think I'm definitely an emotional being. I cry when I'm sad, I cry when I'm mad, cry when I'm happy. But I'm definitely one of those who are truly inspired by other people's story, because there are so many people that I'm inspired by, that I look up to, and to it's not a matter of uh feeling good about their story because you realize, hey, they've struggled or they've suffered before. It's not a matter of wanting anybody else to suffer. It's a matter of really seeing that this person that I'm truly inspired by, that has this or has that, but to see what they have had to overcome to get to where they are now. That's what makes the story powerful. That's what moves, not just me, but I'm pretty sure many other people who are inspired by others. That's what moves me here, simply because it always goes from here to my heart. That's always the case. And I don't know, I just enjoy the thought of overcoming, and continue the continuance of thriving. Like I not only hope that for myself, but anyone who's ever been in a position where they would have never thought that their life would have turned out how it did, in the best way. So I can't be thankful enough.
Yeah. 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 Awesome. Do you often see the 6-year old Farrah, and what do you say to her?
Well, truth be told, not even the 6-year old, because the 6-year old for me was saved. I do see the, because sometimes what you were mentioning as far as age, when you deal with traumatic situations, because there are specks of traumatic situations that I've dealt with, I've seen prior to that, when I wasn't before adoption, before, some in foster care, and even some before foster care, just not being but it's blurry because I was so young, but it's there. And there are certain incidents that I won't go into, but that I do remember. And I think I pull a lot from not just that 6-year old once she was adopted, but I do pull a lot from the gratefulness comes from those spurts of life experiences before that I saw or got to see that I don't wish on anyone, or experience. So that's I want to say, as far as it's before 6 for me when it comes to that, because it's hard to explain, but there are experiences, there are things that I remember that you don't want to remember, and it's easy to bury, just bury, which is, I think for a lot is necessary to move on. But once you heal, or once you deal with it how you need to deal with it, and you it's just it only comes up in settings like this, or when you're expressing yourself. But yeah, there for me is, it wouldn't be what I would say to the 6-year-old, it would be what I would say to the younger child prior to then, that didn't know, sometimes didn't even know what was going on, or wasn't sure what life was going to look like before then. I think it would be what I would say to that little girl. And that's, that you're gonna be okay. Things are gonna be okay. And yeah, I don't, I just, there's some things I just don't wish on any child.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that I think I would be talking more to the younger child, not the 6-year-old, because the 6-year-old, once at that point I knew life was, it's only up from here. Because that was adoption. But prior to that, that's where the question was, hey, what is life gonna, is this what I was meant to be born into? Yeah, so
Yeah. And now, obviously, you're doing so well, including healing. So you can look at her or talk to her objectively and let her know, as you mentioned, that it's not just gonna be okay. It is okay. It is now okay. What do you want young girls growing up in pain to know about what's possible?
there's nothing I would say to that I feel like I could say to everyone as a whole. It really depends on who it is I'm talking to. It
Hmm.
depends on what I can pull from as far as the experience that they've had or they're currently experiencing. If nothing else, knowing that they, still have their full sanity, the ability to make their own decisions, I could only stress, you know, don't take lightly, don't take lightly the choice that you have. If you're in a position where you actually have a choice, what do you want your life to look like? And then it's put peeling back layers, because after that question is answered, it makes it a lot easier to give the response as far as what advice I could give them as far as the choice that they make. But I feel like it's solely about being in a position of having a choice and not taking that choice lightly if you are in that position. Because if it's somebody who doesn't seem to necessarily be in a position where they have a choice, they're still in that survival mode because of what's around them or what they have access to. It's a different conversation for me with them, because then
Yeah.
it's a matter of what can we do realistically, what can we do for you to be in a position where you do have a choice. So mine is solely wrapped around choice, and I'll leave that for another story, but another day. But um, there's other things that are embodied, that are wrapped up in that, as far as that things that I've experienced in my late adulthood, losing a sister who was also adopted. She was adopted at 2 years old. We're not, that wasn't my biological sister, but we were raised together. Adopted at 2 years old, from a life of drugs, a mother with drugs, multiple kids, the list goes on, just to, live a great life and somehow, somewhere find herself in a dark space where unfortunately she lost her life to an overdose. And this was at what, 29 years old, and struggling to, for a while I struggled to understand why. And I struggled because we were in a good place. You were so young, I couldn't understand being that age and being saved from that life, and how that ended up being the doom of your life in the end. when you had a great life. I struggled with that because that's a choice. That was and it wasn't. I know that wasn't, deep down in my heart, that wasn't the intentions. I don't know what exactly. I always wish I could, go back and ask her what exactly drove her to even be curious or being open. Being around the wrong environment, wrong person to even consider. A lot of times, I don't even think she knew exactly what it was she was dealing with, and you know, I 99.9% sure know that was first time even experienced that, and it unfortunately took a life. But I struggled with the choice to even, I did. I struggled with her choice, especially knowing what we got saved from. So I can't stress that enough. For me, is solely choice. If you have the choice, and when indeed you have a choice, when you get to the point where you have a choice on what route your life takes, do not take it lightly. Do not take it lightly, because
Yeah.
this is choice. If anything, it's choice. That's I can't. I
Yeah.
can't stress
And
that
it
enough.
can cost you,
Yes,
obviously,
it can.
like in her situation.
It can change your life in a good way. It can change your life in a bad way.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you so much for sharing. And let me tell you, you opened that up just when we are at the end of it. So, that definitely means that there's a part two to this story, officer, because I would have loved to continue down that road. And even though we're, smiling, first of all, I'm sorry to hear that. Like you said, I can only imagine how you had to deal with that. And I sure wish we had more time to continue there. But at the end of the day, what you're saying is, I think your biggest takeaway is choices, and that when we do have them, not to take them lightly. So we so appreciate your time. Oh my God. Like I said, there's going to be a part two. So listen out for the call. Before we get off here and before I ask your final question, where can our audience reach you? Are you open to obviously more followers, but social media, website? How can we be in contact with you?
Instagram will be my biggest public, because it's for business, friends, family. It's Farrah Shelly underscore. Again, that's Farrah Shelly underscore. Because sometimes, Facebook right now, it's a matter of, I think you have a cap of friends that you can accept. And because I'm always networking and looking for more connections in regards to that, I try to keep a limit to that, because I have a lot of people who are in the business vehicle that I'm in. And then, of course, my friends and family that have already taken up that space. But Instagram would definitely be the biggest platform for me. It's open. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't have a cap. So,
And it's Farrah Shelly underscore.
yes.
And I'll put that in our show notes as well. Thank you so much. And I just have one final question, and I want to ask you, if the world could remember just one thing about Officer Farrah Shelley, what do you hope that one thing would be?
Probably that title, the Officer Shelley, the rose that grew from concrete. Because I feel like it's so much when you read some of those poems, it's so much that in that one phrase, it's a lot for me in that one phrase. Because you see the beauty of something, or excitement, but you got to get down in the roots to really know that person. Or you see an officer, but you don't see the reason why. Not that they're lenient on certain things, but they try to be understanding. They try to dig deeper when they're dealing with someone that has some kind of similar past, or something. Like it's you can't focus on the rose itself. You gotta focus on the roots.
Yeah, I love it. And that in itself is part three. So now we have two more opportunities because, yes, the rose that grew from the concrete, the rose that grew from concrete. Yeah, awesome. So that is amazing, Officer Farah Shelley. And I actually wrote something that I want to share with you.
Okay.
today as I was, preparing myself for this interview, which again, like I said, I am so honored for you to take the time to speak here with us. I said, your story is a reminder that where we start doesn't determine where we finish, and that the most painful beginnings can lead to the most purposeful lives. Thank you for showing us what it means to rise, to serve, and to lead with heart.
Thank you.
So, that is the information that we wanted to share with you today, guys. If this episode resonate with you, don't forget to share it with a friend, and also follow us as well on Instagram at Project Purpose Podcast. Until then, bye for now. Thank you so much, Officer Shelly.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Wow. Wasn't that a powerful story? I know I was inspired. My biggest takeaway from Officer Shelley's story is the fact that we have choices. You could tell that she was extremely passionate about the fact that not everyone actually have choices, right? Some people are constantly in survival mode. However, we who have choices should really act accordingly, right? We should be grateful, but we should definitely take action towards our purpose and towards our power. Thank you again, Officer Shelley, for sharing that powerful story with us. And if today's episode resonate with you, we invite you to share it with a friend so that we can continue to grow together. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel and turn on your notification, because next week we'll be talking about how childhood trauma shapes the adult experience and how we can start healing as a family and as a community. So until then, stay close and remember, just like Officer Shelley, you were never meant to just survive. You were born to rise. Until then, bye for now.